My name is Nikki Reese, and I'd like to welcome you to the International Association of Woodcarvers.
All right, guys, good afternoon and welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today is Saturday, October the 15th, a little bit after 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for coming in today and taking time out of your Saturday to meet with us. Before we get started, just want to tell you a little bit about what we're going to be doing in the meeting today. Chris Gardia was on with us about 2 weeks ago, and he's raising funds for the Boy Scouts of America Jamboree that's coming up. We're going to do an auction today, and it's probably going to be the biggest auction we've ever done in one of these meetings to help benefit Chris and the Boy Scouts of America Jamboree. I've been advertising that throughout the week. All of our sponsors have contributed to this, and today we're going to be doing the auction in the chat as normal. We've got a Helvey knife that I've got here that's part of the auction. It's a palm knife. It's a 2-inch blade, 3 5/8 inch handle. We've got a International Association of Woodcarvers hat. Chris has donated a Gertner knife and a Bolo slide. We've got a 1-month Woodcarving Academy subscription, a $25 gift certificate from the Whittling Shack and Chris Willett, and a $25 gift certificate from Chipping Away. So that's going to be one prize pack. We're going to make that available to the highest bidder during this meeting. If you would, put your bids in the chat. There's no low bid, so whoever wants to start, feel free to do that. Again, all this money goes to the Boy Scouts of America Jamboree, helping Chris Gardia. And if you haven't seen the meeting, you probably should go back and watch that. There's quite a few young carvers that get started through the Boy Scouts. And his group is part of that, part of getting young carvers involved in wood carving. And so we want to try to support him as much as we can. Looks like Nikki, our presenter today, has already kicked that off. So thanks, Nikki. We'll go ahead and start with that bid from there. And again, it's a great prize pack. We'll ask the winner to stay on at the end of the meeting. We'll collect the money. That prize pack will be sent out to you. Again, Christmas is right around the corner. If you want to get some things for Christmas, if you know somebody that wants to get started in wood carving, this would be a great prize pack to participate in. So again, go ahead and put those bids in the chat. I'll close that out towards the end of the meeting. Today, we have on Nikki Reese with us. She's going to be doing a painting demonstration. She's been on in the past. If any of you are familiar with her work, she's on Instagram as Yay Rage. She'll be talking a little bit about her carving journey when we get started. And towards the end of the meeting, I'll talk about some workshops that's coming up and the presenters that we have coming up. But I want to go ahead and get Nikki started. So we'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to her. Nikki, I appreciate you coming on again today. I appreciate all of the information you're going to share. And I appreciate you coming on. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me on. I love being here. I mostly catch you all on YouTube because I'm quite busy on Saturdays, but I really love what you're doing here. And just thank you again for having me on. My name is Nikki Reese. I've been carving, I think about since around 2018. That's about it. You may have seen me in Woodcarving Illustrated. Sometimes I do articles for them, and I have a book called, I think it's Carve, a World of Gnomes. It'd be great if I knew my own book name. And yeah, I carve a lot of gnomes. I carve a lot of like mythical creatures and things out of folklore mostly, and I pretty much carve my own designs. And I'm going to show you all today how I paint. I get a lot of comments on my painting. I like painting the least, but I find that it kind of brings the carvings to life. And so I'm going to show you how I do that today. I brought a couple gnomes that I've carved, and I'm going to probably be painting this one. And it'll end up looking something like this. I don't think I'm going to do the plaid today because that's a bit tedious, but I'm just going to show you what my process is when I carve. When I paint, I kind of do sort of a wet carving method, and that I use very, very wet paint, and I've pre-oiled the carvings. I used to do boiled linseed oil, and I find that over time when that cures, it gets super yellow. and I'm not really into it. So I've started using walnut oil instead, and it's a little bit different for me than the boiled linseed oil, and it takes a bit longer to cure. And time will tell if it yellows as bad as the linseed oil. So this guy I oiled about 2 weeks ago, but he's still given a little oil back on my fingers. And this guy I did a couple nights ago, and usually I let them sit for 24 to 48 hours. I don't usually go 2 weeks, but I think it will be fine. And the reason I like to oil my carvings before I paint is the paint absorbs differently. When you paint just a dry carving, it tends to soak it up really fast, and I like to blend my colors on the carving, and so that's why I like oiling it first. Yeah, so let's get started. When I paint these, I usually start with the head, and I start with an undiluted red for the hats because I don't want it bleeding into the face. And once I get sort of all the lines where I don't want it bleeding, I'll go ahead and go in with a diluted red. And I do that all around the skin. With the beard, I'll use an undiluted gray, and back here around the ears as well. And that just helps me, like I said, keep it from bleeding. Let's see if that's good. We can see. Excellent. And it takes me around about 45 minutes to an hour and a half to paint a carving, depending on the size of it and sort of what design I'm doing. If I were to do something like a plaid, where's that at? There we go. That would take me closer to an hour and a half because of all the lines inside the plaid, which is why we are not doing that today. And this, I think when I paint, is probably the most tedious part, is just making sure we keep those lines clean. A lot of times when I paint, I like to put on a TV show or a podcast, something I can really zone out on because it takes so long.
Nikki, what brushes are you using?
These are called Lenbicki. They're just round brushes. You can get them on Amazon. I think you can get them at like Michael's and stuff too. I like to use almost exclusively round brushes. I'll use a flat brush when I dry brush like the beard or any facets. And when people aren't watching, I usually just paint the whole thing with one brush. But yeah, using a little guy to get these little details in here. And like I said, I'm just getting the edge of it. I'm just getting the spot where it won't bleed in when I come in with the lighter wash. And hopefully y'all can't hear my upstairs neighbor stomping around. Okay, that's a bit small. Just gonna get the brim. And what I typically do with these hats is I'll fade from a saturated to a less saturated red to sort of hide that very, very thick paint that I'm doing. And I got a little bit on the ear. So what I do, this is a good, when I make a mistake, I don't know if it's coming up on the camera, but there is a little red right there, and I just carve it out and it's fine. So to dilute the red, I try to use just a drop or two. And come up with a dropper. A little bit thinner than I want. And I mix just about every color I put my paint with. I think sometimes the greens I won't mix, but I'm a little particular about my palette. Let's see if that's still in the center.
Do you use a certain ratio of paint to water?
I don't. I just do it until I like the thickness of it. Which I realize is a little bit chaotic. But so far it's working out. Okay, so you can't really see very well where that undiluted paint is, which is exactly what I want with this. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the beard around the skin. I just got a bit of water off camera that I rinse my brushes out with. And again, for that, I am going to mix that color. When I'm doing the gray for the beard, I like to put a little bit of black in it and make it a darker gray. So when you come back in later and dry brush, it'll really make the facets of the beard pop. As opposed to just like a classic gray by itself. Put some of that right there. And then you only ever need a little bit of black. And my color palettes get really, really messy. But I found that they actually, there's some paint on them, but they clean off really well with just hot water. If you just dump some hot water on there and let it soak, it'll peel right out. Got a little bit of that red just a sec on the gnome, and it's absorbed in, so he's probably gonna have a red shirt. Okay, we good? And
Hey,
again,
Nikki,
just
how do you take care of your brushes? Do you have any special tips?
I usually do just soap, like not laundry detergent, dish soap, just like Dawn. And I'll do a little warm water and a little bit of Dawn and just give them a good rinse out afterwards. And then I store them tip up in like a big cup, and that's it. I have some really fine brushes that I use for line work that I will keep in a little plastic cylinder, and they usually come in a plastic cylinder. But for the most part, just some water and some dish soap, and that's it. Not letting them dry out mostly, and that's why I have a cup of water offhand or off camera. If you don't let them dry up at all, you'll be fine. Okay, so you can see around the face, at least the cheeks, that we've got the undiluted paint, and I'll go in underneath the nose where the mustache connects, and I will get that as well. And then also where the lip is. Okay, and then the inside of the ears right here, where those meet, I'll go ahead and put that undiluted gray in there as well. And like I said, this is the longest for my painting process. It's just making sure those lines aren't going to bleed. It's also why I like the method of oiling before you paint, is that I find because the wood is less thirsty, you're less likely to have that bleed over. At least for me. I mean, I don't have the cleanest lines. I know a clean line helps as well, but for me anyways, that's what works the best. Okay, and I'm not really worried about where the hair meets the hat or any of this down here. I will also do a undiluted on the eyebrows. Just a sec. Oh, but too much water on there. And I'll finish the beard up while those eyebrows are drying, because after the eyebrows, I do like to go in and get the skin tone in. But if the eyebrows aren't dry first, that'll usually mess it up and they'll bleed really bad. All right. This back over and I'll show you what I do. Just a couple drops. Mix it up. Another drop.
Hey, Nikki, do you like make a bunch of carvings and then paint them all at once, or do you paint as you go?
I usually paint as I go because it takes so long. I've tried to carve a bunch before and paint them all at once, and I just don't have the attention span for it. I always end up just carving one and leaving the rest, just because it takes so long. So I typically try and paint as I go. And in recent months, I've been giving myself more time. It used to be I was so excited after I painted, or excuse me, after I carved a carving that I'd want to paint it like the same day. And that really led to a lot of paint jobs I wasn't happy with because I wasn't allowing the oil the time to soak in. So I'm a one at a time. I'm much more relaxed than I used to be about it. And you can see that sort of, it still absorbs in pretty fast, but it's not, the wood isn't drinking up as fast as it would if it wasn't oiled. Which, like I said, this is my method because I like to go in afterwards and shade, and it's easier for me to blend the shading if that's still a little wet.
And Nikki, you talked before the meeting, and I don't want to put you on the spot, that you'd be teaching at the Campbell Folk School. You want to talk a little bit about that and kind of get people interested in what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in January, from I think it's the 15th through 21st in North Carolina, I'm going to be teaching a class at the John Campbell Folk School. It's a week-long class. It's on campus, so you come and live and eat on campus. And the class I'm teaching is storytelling through wood carving. And the idea is that me personally, I'm very inspired by the natural world around me and folklore and telling stories with the things that I carve. That's why I really got into the gnomes and, you know, things like Slavic folklore, like the Baba Yaga house. And so, yeah, the class is beginning to intermediate, and we're just going to go over basics of carving and painting and trying to really inspire people and talk about, you know, what is it in your world that gets you excited and what can you create with that. And we'll end the week with a personalized gnome with its own story that you created. And the John Campbell Folk School is amazing. If you don't know anything about it, or you haven't heard of it, you should look it up. They're on a huge campus. They have like folk square dancing every night. There's a huge cafeteria. Like, it looks really, really cool. And I'm super excited to go and hang out with some people and do some carving. There are still positions available. And if you go on their website, they also do scholarships. So if it's not a price tag, you can get down with, I do believe there's still scholarships available for that. And again, I got sloppy right there. So I am going to try and carve that off. I'm going faster than I usually go for the sake of this class. We don't want to throw it. Don't do that. All right. So we've got the main beard and the hat colors on. So you can see the beard is still very wet. And I'm going to go in now and start mixing up the color I'm using for skin. So this gnome is going to be Caucasian. And so we're going to go for a lighter skin tone. And for this, I just really use a bunch of water because I'm going to be mixing 3 different colors when I do skin. I'm going to start with a base of brown. And with these colors, I just want to do a wash. Like I don't want to lose the look and the grain and the warmth of the wood. I want it to, I just want to enhance that a little bit. So a little bit of brown, I'm going to take some of this red, do a little bit of red. It's a little much. And then the last color I add typically is yellow. And balancing those out, you can pretty much, those three colors, make any skin tone you desire. So that looks like chocolate milk. The way I test this before I put it on the piece of wood, because you know all basswood sort of has different hues, and when it has oil on it, it looks different. And so I always like to test it on the piece of wood I'm going to be painting and not a scrap piece of wood. You can do it on a scrap piece of wood, but in order to know how it's going to behave, I just flip it on the bottom. And I go ahead and see how that looks. And if I'm happy with that color, I'll go ahead and paint the face and the ears. If I'm not, I'll adjust it and I'll try it again. But that's how I dial in how I want a skin tone to look, is just by putting it on the bottom of the carving. So you're using the same wood, you're using the same saturation, you know how it's going to look. And this is just it's very, very wet. And like I said, it doesn't really change the look or the color of the wood as much as it enhances it. If I was doing someone with a darker skin tone, I would just pop some more brown in there probably, and a little bit more red. And when I do this, when I'm doing the skin, I like to put it on really liberally, just get it nice and wet, because I like to put in blush accents. And like I said, depending on your skin tone, if you're carving a character that is black, it's not going to have the same kind of blush, right? So we try and be conscious of the skin tones we're working with. But this guy is going to have some blush. So I've just taken some of this watered down brown right here, and then I bop a little bit of the red in it. That's a bit too much, so I take it over here. And I think that's where I want it. I'm just going to touch the nose. And because it's so wet, it's going to sort of spread out. And I'll let that absorb. And I'll come in and do the cheeks the same way. Let me see that. Sorry, I realized I wasn't really doing that on camera. And while that's absorbing, I'm going to go ahead and give him some blush accents on his ears. That's a bit too red, so I can come back in, and because it's so wet, I can take the original skin color and just sort of blend it in a bit more, so it makes it less harsh. And that's why I do the more wet paint with the skin, is when those blush accents are a bit too much, I can come in and just sort of drown it out. I'm just going to get that a little bit darker. Sometimes it feels like it's going to be too red. Usually what happens is the wood just absorbs it and it's fine. And if, like, say for instance, I hated how red that is, I've got a paper towel over here and I can just blot it. And it takes a lot of that red off, and then you can readjust. And that's sort of the benefit of doing it a bit more wet, is you can really fine tune how saturated that is, and you can take it off if you hate it. I'm quite happy with that. I'm trying to get, there we go. So I'm going to move on. And if I come back later and it's absorbed a bunch, I don't think it's bright enough, I'll just come back in and do a touch up. Okay. Going to go ahead and give him some black overalls, or at least the straps. And in the same way that I did the beard, I'll use a less diluted black. That's blue. I've got the black right here. And I'm going to use a finer brush for that. I find that black paints tend to be a lot thicker than the other colors, so I will just use a little water for my brush to thin that out just a skosh. That's a bit too thin. So I come back over here and thicken it up a bit. I find black to be, it misbehaves. There must be something about the weight of the pigment with the black paints. I mean, I haven't looked into it, I'm just speculating. But it is misbehaves just a little bit.
Hey, Nikki, do you always paint from the top down, or do you kind of choose what to paint first based off of colors as well?
I typically always paint from the top down. There isn't really a reason why I do that. Well, there is. It's so as I'm painting, I have something to grab onto. So as this dries, I can hold it and start painting down here. And that's pretty much why. So I could also, the same thread of thought, paint from the bottom up. But this is just sort of what works best for me. It's also how I carve. I carve from the top down. Like I usually carve the head almost in its entirety before I start carving the rest of the carving. And the kind of paints I use, I just use folk art acrylics, which is a water-based acrylic. I use it because I can find it anywhere and it's super cheap. I am interested in starting to look in, I know there's some acrylic paints. They're a bit more expensive, but are color fast, so they won't fade. It is something I want to start looking into. I found that yellows and oranges seem to fade pretty fast. Like I've got some, my grandmother has some of my paintings that she keeps in her windowsill, and the orange and yellow bits have faded pretty severely. So that's the only downside really of these cheaper paints. And just this bit, like I lied when I said the beard was the most tedious part. It's definitely the suspenders. But I tell you what, the more time you take on the painting, the happier you're going to be in the end. Well, I think when I first started painting, I was using full, like I wasn't diluting them at all, just using straight paint from the bottle. And then I was dousing them in antiquing solution, which is a great look. If that's your thing, that's awesome. But it's not my thing. And then I would just wipe it off. And over time, I found that I like to see the wood grain a little bit more. And I like creating a shadow effect with the colors that I've painted with. So when I've gone in and actually painted something other than the face and suspenders, like the shirt or the pants, I'll show you how I create a shadow, which is typically just the paint plus a little bit of black and a dry brush. And we'll get there in just a bit. This last bit, I'm going to paint that little triangle brown. But I'll do that later. Another tip I have for painting is to try and shred up your wood as little as possible. Like I've really shredded this bottom bit of the suspender and it's sort of bleeding everywhere, but the cleaner your lines are and the less the tip of your knife goes into the edges of what you're cutting, the better the paint will take to the wood. That's something I struggle with sometimes too. If I'm not being conscientious of where the tip of my knife is, I'll just shred an edge and it'll be a nightmare to paint later. All right, pretty happy with that. Suspenders are done. we'll go ahead and start looking on this shirt. Got some red on it. I'm just trying to decide if that's too much to do a different color. I think I'm just going to peel that top layer off. And the great thing about the oil is that it penetrates pretty deep. So I'm not really at risk of carving to a bit of wood that isn't oiled, which would change the way the paint interacts with it. But it's such a small spot, it's fine. And then I got some black on the pants. All right. I'm gonna check my hands real quick. That up. Okay, let's go ahead and give him a green shirt. Drops green. Probably gonna need some more. I find sometimes too, if I have a bunch of carvings I want to paint and I don't want to lose my paint, just put some cling wrap on it and that'll keep it fresh for a bit. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Put a skosh too much water in there. That's one benefit of having a tidy line is it shouldn't go to where the pants are. If it does a little bit, it's okay. Because the pants are going to be darker than the shirt. And I got some on the pants, and that's okay. I'm going to finish this shirt real quick, and I'm going to show you how I shade this. So obviously, making nice, big, aggressive, deep cuts is going to create a shadow where you want shadow. But I noticed a lot of like traditional Russian carvers will carve a lot of shallow features, but they have such lush paint jobs that it really creates this sense of depth that is almost an optical illusion. And I really like that. So I try and combine, you know, deep carving with that depth creating shadow. All right, actually, I'm gonna let that shirt dry a little bit more before I go into shadowing. It works best if it's a little bit drier than that. And for the pants, use a little bit of this dirty, dusty blue and some midnight blue, midnight indigo. And my preference is to have the paint on the pants a little bit thicker. And because that shirt's still a little wet, you can sort of see the sheen on it. I'm going to continue holding him by his head before I move on to the pants. And I think one of the reasons why this wood is staying a little bit more wet is because I put that oil on it a couple weeks ago. If I were painting something like this, which has just been oiled for a couple days, it would dry up a lot faster. But it is okay. You just have to be mindful of where your fingers are. Sometimes I'll put a tack in the bottom, like a thumbtack, and hold it while I do some painting as well. If there's nowhere to really grab it. You see that okay? When I come back and do these pants, I'll be putting a darker blue sort of in the creases right there. So guys, what would you say is more boring? Watching someone paint or watching paint dry?
Nikki, in your carving process, do you carve mostly with just a knife, or do you use gouges and knives both?
I carve mostly with 2 knives, a rough out knife and a detail knife. And when I do the ears, when I'm separating the ears from the block of wood, I'll use a gouge. So I'll do a deep stop cut and I'll gouge the ear out. Because I don't use rough outs, the gouge really helps with that. And then I've got some micro gouges that I'll use for the beard. And that's about it.
And I'll
So,
make a selfless plug here. We had you on a while back, so there's a video out on YouTube if people want to go out and watch it, of where you actually carved one of your gnomes. So make sure if you haven't liked and subscribed that channel, go out and check it out, and you can see her video there.
there you go. Yeah, I remember that was a particularly hard piece of wood.
It was, but you did a great job.
No, thanks. Yeah, I struggled with that one.
So we're getting a question in the chat as far as what the 2 colors that you used. You said a dab of black and something else.
So for the pants, I've used Indigo Night and something I can't see, Skyline. And I think the shirt was just a classic green, just a very bog standard primary color.
Okay.
And the hat is cardinal red. And I used daffodil yellow and coffee brown for the face. All right, pants are done. Let's go in and shade that shirt. So I'm going to use 2 brushes for this. And what you're not going to see is one is going to be, well, you might see, I'm still there, is going to be cupped in my mouth. Because when I do this, I try and switch over pretty fast before it absorbs in. So I've got a green right here. Get some black. Some black right there. And what I'm going to be doing is making my shadow line with this smaller brush, quite heavy, and I'll come in with this brush and blend it in. Give me just a second to get that set up and all the paint off my hands. So I'm going to take just a little bit of that black and mix it in. So you're just looking for like a muddy color of the one you used before. And you can do this with, you don't have to use black, you can use brown, or you can just use, you know, whatever works for you. I have a sort of Carhartt tan that does not do well with this method. I have to use brown instead of black because it just sort of turns orange. All right. So nice and thin. I'm gonna heavily apply that. And before it can absorb too much, I'm gonna come with this and just blend it. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you've done your whole carving like that, it can really make a difference as far as a subtle pop. And that wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm just gonna, there we go. And blend. Doing the creases and the fold of the arm. And fan it out. And this, I'm going to go in and do this in basically every major crease area, anywhere I feel like there might be a natural shadow created by the beard or the head. I don't know if the color is really showing up on Zoom very well. Do around the base of that. My dog for a second. Because maintenance is here. So you can see it's a pretty subtle change. But the difference when you compare it to an unshaded side is significant in my opinion. Like I said, it's just a small thing you can do to make your carving pop a little bit more, add that depth, make it seem a little more real.
So Nikki, is he wearing Crocs?
He is wearing Crocs.
I love it.
If you're a Croc hater, I don't want to hear it. It's like walking on pillows.
Yeah, I don't care for him myself, but I love that on the carving.
Oh, it's okay, they are hideous, but they are very comfortable. So underneath the collar right here and sort of underneath the hair a bit. And this is what I enjoy the most. This is when it starts to feel like it's coming alive a bit for me. And I'll just go ahead and finish doing that throughout the rest. I'll mix a little bit more of my shading right here. And like I said, this is where the oiled or the wet carving really is forgiving. Because it's not absorbing in immediately, it gives you a few seconds to work with it and move it around. In the creases. And a bit more right there. And what's really fun, excuse the brush in my mouth, about this as well, is when you're done going through and shading all of that, you can come back in and lightly dry brush the whole thing with a complementary color. So for instance, I could go back in on the shirt specifically, and sometimes I'll dry brush 3 different colors. I could dry brush a lime green or a yellow, and it would make the facets pop, and it would just give it that little extra bit of depth. You can see it on this one, maybe, if it'll show up. So it's painted in a blue, but then it's been dry brushed with a lighter blue. I don't really think that's showing up on Zoom. I personally like the effect. I think it looks good. And let's go ahead and get the jeans. So rinse that out. Get a bit more, still breathe in there. Get some blue. Get some black. Get a bit more black. And for this, I think I'm going to throw a little bit more midnight blue in there as well. Just makes it a bit more rich. Gonna get in the creases and find my other brush. I've got another one right here I can use. This is actually a makeup brush that Amazon accidentally sent me, and it works really well for painting. So I find that in the creases is a good place to get that darkness, that shadow, right between the legs. Go around to the butt, same thing. Line that a little bit. Bit more. Get it here. And right in between. And for right underneath here, gonna get a little bit more black on that. And we're gonna get, try to get that in camera. There we go. Just those little creases that you spent all that time cutting out. Highlight them with a little bit of that dark. And you're just subtly creating that depth. And if I really wanted to accentuate his belly right here, I could take that crotch line and paint it in a bit more. And then use that to blend it. So like I said, they're not big changes, they're just little changes that really go a long way with the overall look of the carving. Okay. Up a bit, and we'll do his Crocs. I'm gonna do his Crocs in color suggestions. Let's take a request. What color should the Crocs be? Anyone?
Blue.
Blue. All right, let's get a more fun blue then, yeah?
Electric blue.
Oh, okay, we'll do it again. All right. Do a little bit of that. That's pretty blue. And tone that down a little bit with some of that. Oh, I hope that's blue enough for you.
That's gorgeous.
Perfect. All right. Oh, that is really pretty. Good shout. I fall into the habit of using a lot of earth tones and not making any fun colors. So this is nice. And I'll come back in the same way that I shadowed everything else. The Crocs will also get some shadow lines, especially in their holes, to make those pop out a little bit more. Like I said, if you take the time carving it, you may as well highlight it when you're painting it. This is the fastest paint job I've ever done, guys. So thank you so much for putting the pressure on. When we finish up these Crocs, we will go in and I'll show you how I like to dry brush. And I usually dry brush with the brushes that have gone to dye, typically. Just get inside there. Cool. All right. Gonna let those dry a bit, and I'll show you how I do the dry brush. So this is what I'm going to use to dry brush his beard. It is a beat up, crusty old brush, but it works. I'm going to get my whites, and I usually dab a little bit, and then over to the side here. I will do this until I feel like it's good. Sometimes I also use my hand because you can really feel the moisture content on your hand. These are like just messy, bad painter tips, but this is what I do. It's like a gremlin painting. Yeah, and then just start down here. And I typically like to make the sideburns a bit more salty, just to create that depth of what you're doing. Get underneath. And you can really see where that darker gray starts to shine in the facets. Up around his back, same thing with the hair, a little less fussy about that. So yeah, that's the dry brush on the face. If I wanted to do the shirt, I'll show you how to do it with a little bit of yellow. Try and get a little white off of this, because I don't have enough brushes to dry brush with right now. Same thing, bad habits. And then very gently, I will just, so I'm not really touching those places I shadowed so much, but just getting the tops of the facets. And if I were going to do the pants, I would probably use a primary blue. I'm just gonna move some of this open paint real quick. I think this brush will probably work. Again, off to the side. This blue tends to be a little bit thinner. And then just lightly. These are very, very small details that aren't noticeable, but like I said, it's making a whole. And sometimes when I do like black suspenders, I'll dry brush that with white too, but I'm not gonna do that today because I've run out of brushes. This guy's got a little patch on his butt. See that? So I'm gonna give him a little patch and I'm gonna make it red. Do that full strength. Because I don't want it bleeding. Let's see if I get that framed in well.
And Nikki, I know we talked in the last meeting before, and I don't know if it's changed or not. Do you sell your carvings, or what do you usually do with your carvings?
I usually give them away. I don't really have a business with selling carvings. I give them away. I do trades. So if you're a carver and you want to do a trade, I can usually do that. It's really fun. And sometimes if I'm dying for a tool that I can't afford, I will sell a few off on my Instagram so I can buy that tool. That's about it. All right. I think the Crocs have dried enough now that we will. Again, using the same method I used before, a little black. That's a little bit much. A little blue. And then we go right in here. And right on the top. See that all right? Okay. Then I'm going to go a little bit darker for the holes. So more heavy on the black. And I'm just going to get right in those. A little less heavy on my black. There we go. paint line. Yep. And then there's these great little tools to blend that. And I don't know what they're called, but they work great for dots. I thought I went to this side, it'd be fun, quick. I think people use them for nail art and acrylics. These little guys, if you got to make a lot of dots or you don't want to do a paintbrush dot, these are great. So for the Crocs, they've got that black logo on the side. I've just got some black on there, and I'll do a little dot, little dot. Nice and easy. And they're also great for buttons. I'll give this guy some buttons, and we will do whatever color I can put the buttons. So same idea. Dot, dot, and I'll get one in the back. And that's it. My fully painted gnome. And watch out for those dots because they'll get everywhere until they're dry. Yeah, I don't know how long that took, but that's pretty much done. I will go back and paint the bottom of it. His feet with the full color, undiluted of the shoe color, but that's it. And carve my initials into it once that's dry. I also like to finish up. I'll let that dry for about 2 days, depending, and then I finish it up with this stuff, which is just folk art craft wax. It's a clear wax. It leaves a sort of matte sheen, and you put it on and buff it out. So like overnight, leave it on. And the more sort of layers you put on, the shinier it gets. But it's waterproof. It's food safe. I like it.
Nikki, did you do anything with that bottom lip?
Oh, good shout. I forgot.
I was just watching it thinking, I wonder when she's gonna get the lip.
Yep, no, you're right. For that, we're just gonna do some red. He's gonna have a cherry lip. Make sure, oh, that's got some black in it, hold on. Again, untainted paintbrush. And you know what, I might come back in and make his nose a little bit redder too while we're here. There we go. Good shout. Would have been a travesty. Get those cheeks a little more. There you go. Good catch. And that's it for me. Like I said, I've got a class at John Campbell Folk School, January 15th through 21st. If you want to come hang out, that would be great. I think I've got an article out next month in Woodcarving Illustrated, or not next month, but next season. So with the winter issue. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, Nikki, do we have any other questions from anybody in the group? Anything in the chat? I'll leave the auction open for a few more minutes. I did want to say the book is called Carve, a World of Gnomes. Looks like this. I think you can find it out on the internet.
Yeah.
Published by Fox Chapel. So make sure you go out, check that out. She's got several projects in there. Little gnome house. So yeah, it's a great book. Thank you, Nikki, for coming on today. And you've been more than generous. You're always willing to come on and help, and we appreciate that. Again, the auction is open. So if anybody else wants to bid, make sure you go out and check that out. Want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've got coming up. Workshops that are going on. If you're interested in taking some classes and you can't get out to classes, I highly encourage people to participate in the workshops that are coming up. Dave Stetson has one on November the 5th on carving Santa. If you're interested in that, you need to reach out to Dave so that you can get signed up. And you also need to decide if you're going to use a rough out or if you're going to use a cutout. Dave can give you all of the details as far as that class goes. Janet Cordell is going to be doing a Nelly doll starting on November the 11th. Bob Hershey, who's on with us today, is going to be doing a raccoon Santa on December the 3rd. And Ryan Olson signed up to do a class on January the 14th, carving flat plane characters. So if you're interested in any of those, check that out. Go out and reach out to the instructors, and they'll be able to give you the information. Also, go out and check out Woodcarving Academy. All of the workshops are posted out there. You can also sign up for a subscription with them 1 month, 3 months, and a year. And there's a lot of past workshops that's been held that's available out there. You need to go out and check those out. I know Dev Green's on. He had one, or actually has a few out there. Dave's got a few out there. There's quite a few instructors who have videos out there. They're great learning tools. So make sure you check out Woodcarving Academy. Again, they also put something in the auction today for a 1 month Woodcarving Academy subscription. So we appreciate their support. Coming up with our meetings, Bob Hershey, who is on today again, will be presenting with us next week. He's going to do some cottonwood bark work. Again, that's October the 22nd. Rod Gatlin from Charlotte's going to be presenting on the 29th. He's going to be talking about the Charlotte Wood Carving Show and talk about his wood carving journey. And then Ryan Olson's coming on November the 19th, and he's going to be doing a demonstration to prepare people for his class that's coming up in January. Dave and I will be working hard on trying to sign people up and get more presenters lined up coming up so that we'll have people through the end of the year. We plan on continuing these meetings. So if you know of anybody, or if you want to come on and present yourself, make sure you reach out to myself or Dave Levee. We'll get you signed up so that we can continue to have these meetings. That is about all I have. I'm going to go ahead and close the auction at this point. Again, all of the proceeds from the auction goes to benefit the Boy Scouts of America Jamboree that's coming up next year. Chris Gardia talked about that in their meeting 2 weeks ago. So if you missed that, make sure you go out and check that out. It's a good program because they introduce a lot of kids to wood carving, and that's a great way to grow the community and keep people involved in carving. So just want to say thanks to all of our people that sponsor us on contributing to that auction. And it looks as though Tommy Thigpen is the high bidder. So Tommy, if you will stay on, we'll get your information. I did talk to Tommy a second ago, and she wants to donate the 1 month Woodcarving Academy subscription to someone in this group. We're actually going to donate that to Nikki, our presenter today that presented with us. She wants to give that to Nikki so that she can get on Woodcarving Academy and check that out. So Nikki, I'll be getting you that information here shortly.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Tommy, if you'll just stick around, we'll get your information here in just a few minutes. This has been the International Association of Woodcarvers. I appreciate you all coming out every week and supporting us and participating in these meetings. We look forward to seeing you all next Saturday with Bob Hershey at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Nikki, again, thanks for everything that you do, and we'll see you all next Saturday. Thank you.